Thanks for attending. So hopefully I'll give you some insights on some of the experiences we've had at Deckers, the main brand you probably know as Argo. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Just before I start, it's interesting. I've been getting obviously feeds through on Draper's Digital last week. I saw that I think his name's George Wood from All Saints has been talking in these turbulent times post-Brexit with retail influxes that digital and international is the area you should focus. So I kind of went, wee. Hopefully you'll get some insights from our journey that we've had through this and how we've had to change as our business has matured. So a very quick overview of Deckersbrands. If you don't know who we are, we're an American company based in Santa Barbara, California, grown substantially over the last 15 years especially. We've got 3 brands in Europe that we focus on specifically, which are Teva, Hoka, and obviously UGG. Used to be UGG Australia, it's now UGG. Right, this is flicking through without me doing anything. Sorry. Is there anything? Oh, I set it up. I'm not touching it, so it should be on click. I'm slightly panicking here. It's going ahead really quick. Did you? Sorry, guys. Do I do it on here? So I just carry on, or? This is quite hard, because this is just going on, it's not going back or anything, or forward, so I'll go back anyway, so very quickly anyway, about myself, I've been doing international e-commerce for quite a long time. I started really doing it, I've been in e-commerce for 16 years and went to Charles Chirrut for 3.5 years and ran their US websites, French website, UK website, and German website, so a big eye-opener there. And I moved via another company called Bowes & Wilkins to Deckers in 2010. So hopefully this will start working now. Clicker's not working, sorry. Right, okay. Yeah, great. So I joined Deckers in 2010. This is what I inherited, was 2 small brands that no one knew, 2 markets, 2 brands, 3 languages, and it was driving the massive volume of $150,000 of revenue, just launched, managed from the US. I very quickly changed that, and I'm going to tell you some of the story of how that changed. And now we're in 2016, we're in 30 plus markets, 5 languages, 3 brands and 9 websites, so it's been quite a journey, and I can't tell you the value of that, but I'll give you some insights to it as we go along. So here are some of the initial challenges in building an international e-commerce business, and some of these still remain. So while I'm going to tell you my journey, I'm sure if you're just starting out with international or you're a year or so in, these challenges, especially if you're a brand or a portfolio of brands going international, will probably resonate with you. So the initial problem we had when we first did it, I think everyone had these, was around legacy systems. I talked about those 3 websites we had there, all managed off legacy systems, and it was very difficult for us to scale those out internationally. So that was the first challenge we had. I think most of us here have gone through that challenge. What we've done is gone to a cloud SAS, software as a service provider. I think a lot of people are already in that space. They realized that they had to, if they wished to scale internationally, needed a hassle-free e-business platform to work on. The other challenge that we had, and still have a little bit of, is really around the channel conflict. Initially, when you're a brand that has existing distribution in other markets, you either have retail stores, some concessions, you go into other places in Europe, the distributors set up pricing. It's very, very difficult if you're just starting out to be able to match the pricing if you go into that market. Lots of discussions around that. Little bits of distrust initially around us going into markets where we weren't there previously, seen as seeding sales. Again, you probably know all this. The other elements of problems with that we had was that we had a lot of business silos within Deckers. So purchasing was done very much on a wholesale model, but we were moving direct to consumer and buying for e-commerce with much smaller volumes. So everything was out of whack. Marketing again was focused on the brand marketing, which was focused again on our wholesale channel mainly, and not for retail and e-commerce. So all these little areas we had were a little bit different, and operations was very focused around a wholesale business. So getting operations to understand when you're going direct to e-commerce that you do have to ship within 24 hours, and people do want their returns refunded in within 24 hours as well is a bit of a culture shock and a culture change. We also had, this has always been a situation, but especially about 4 or 5 years ago, and still to an extent now, what's the rule book for international? The knowledge that was there, it really wasn't there. There's a lot of pioneering that you have to do and learning, trying and failing things to do that. There are some great, what there is now is there is a lot of information out there that wasn't necessarily there before. If you really wanted to go international, you needed to use Accenture or someone like that to scale a business at great cost. There is a lot more knowledge now, a lot more learning out there than there was at the time, probably 4 or 5 years ago. But it was a big challenge at the time. Does anyone know? I want to ask everyone here. Does everyone know who this person is? Can you put your hand up? 3 people, 4 people. This is Tom Brady. Tom Brady is the David Beckham, or Lionel Messi of American football. He has won 4 Super Bowl rings, MVP in the Super Bowl 3 times, plays for the New England Patriots, and is married to Giselle. So if you think of that. We work for an American company. When you're going to Europe, and I saw it was talked about earlier about in the Urban Outfitters, no one knows who he is, and we're given these assets and contents to work with. So massive in the US. No one over here knows who he is. Those sorts of challenges are ones you're going to continually have. And if you're actually the lead market and you're going to other markets, you have to take that into account as well. It was talked about with Urban Outfitters about how they had to make some changes for the German kids. I think it's the same for any brand as you go international. The other challenges we've had, and I think was around the fact we have a very big head office in the US. How much do we centralize with them? How much do we keep within Europe? What functions do we keep here? The first thing we did was marketing and merchandising has to be localized. You have to have your marketing done at a regional level. But also then, how do you interface with, we also had the questions whether do we have people in Europe? Do we keep everyone central in London? And also the other elements of what we had was how do we interface with Japan and China and those other markets and share information? So it was a big thing that we had to go through as we structured the business. This one is often used. Other challenges you get when you're doing European business, international business, is the calendars and promotions. And the Mother's Day one is often used because I think there are about 10 different Mother's Day dates across the world, or across Europe and across the US. Everyone has it different days. If you go into China, there's Golden Week, there are so many different things you have to take account of that you can't centralize everything. You have to really think about how you manage the content in those local environments and match those things. And then finally, the cultural differences. I think you all know here that there are this is the obvious example, but is payments. Payments, there are so many different payment types in Europe. You go into China and you've got social commerce, which was talked about earlier. There are so many different ways of doing things, and that's just the one thing. Address formats, delivery types, etc. These are all slight differences and nuances you have to take into account. So we went through all these challenges ourselves. Obviously, one size does not fit all. You come to that realization very quick, and you structure your business according to it. So there's still lots of opportunities if you know where to make them, as the Pet Shop Boys once said. Anyway, so I had to get an 80s reference in there. And obviously, as you go internationally, there is still a lot of white space. There is always white space if you are a brand going abroad. There are products that retailers or concessions are not stocked in that market that you might be able to leverage. There is distribution and that you just don't know is there. And there are obviously new markets you can attack. If you're in a brand like we are, there's always brand equity as a foundation wherever you go. People do know UGG in most markets, and it gives you enough information, consumer insight, for you to be able to use that to grow a business in other markets. International shipping, easy place to start. We have an EU website. We ship internationally across the EU from that. That's a great, very basic website. Nothing special. Shipping internationally is just a matter of offering different delivery options on your website and charging accordingly. I think most of us do that, and a lot of people right now are making the best out of that in the UK because of the exchange rate. So, obvious place to start. Localization, when you're ready, always equals high growth. So, if you are looking to launch a German website, when you're ready and you have all those pieces in place, you should see a huge increase. Local people want to see things in their local languages, and they want to see it with the right delivery options, right payments, and everything. You get that there and get that right, you'll see some huge growth. As you go along, marketplace entry, you learn as you go. So each time you launch a new website, you learn more and more about it. You have a playbook that you can use to launch, and it becomes a lot easier. And also the rest of the business understands it. Freedom to try and fail, which is something in the digital world, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later with agility. And as time has gone on, obviously technologies are cheaper now, easier to input and take out. So and you can customize them by market. So there's still a lot of stuff out there from an international point of view. If you're starting out in the first couple of years, that you can make real huge gains in those markets and experience international growth up to 3 digits if you really wish. So as we matured, back to this 30 markets, 5 languages, we've got a situation with UGG as a brand, and where a lot of brands have gone direct, we've got a mature distribution. It's very even. So the UK, which was when we started for UGG, was 95% of our business is now 50% of our business, and 35% of our business is in these local, where it's in the slightly red, is our local website markets, and the 15% is the rest of Europe. So it was great. We were maturing. We have a very even distribution. That's the aim. That was the strategic aim, is that we would be try and be consistent. But this business maturity brings new challenges and brought new challenges to us. The key thing which we all talk about is we know the consumer's changed. Everything is mobile now. iPad came and mobile came. You now have to consider, even though desktop is declining a bit, you have to consider 3 device types now, and really have to consider mobile at the front of everything you do. Is it working? This has stopped working now. There we go. There we go. Got it. So the other thing to add right now, but everything's got more complicated, and this thing on the left is an example of some of the technologies that you have there when you're doing your marketing or your personalization. There are lots of technologies, it's working now, that are driving you to the 3 different device types that you have in 3 different currencies. As we've expanded the business, we've got more delivery types that we use, more payment types that we need to use. We're using more of these different delivery mechanisms, whether it's you might end up using the Dropbox in Germany. We don't yet, but you might use that, or you might use different delivery companies in each market. And you're having it delivered to home. You're having it delivered to pickup points. You're having it delivered to store, because everyone's doing omni-channel. And we were doing that in 6 websites in 3 brands. So as it starts getting bigger, you mature, you start to suddenly go back to that 80-20 I talk about in a minute. The other thing that you can get now is either through your SaaS platforms or just through other areas, is to be able to benchmark yourself, and also those websites. And we were starting to see massive conversion differences at a micro level across all the websites. And we knew there were issues, but we didn't know what to do, how to focus on which ones. And what we were really finding, the other side of this as well, as you grow bigger, was as you grow with these key markets, which are France, Germany, are the obvious ones. We had a very big Dutch business. You start getting to the world when you want inorganic growth, and by that I mean going into new markets, new channels in new markets, becomes more difficult, because they're either high impact but very difficult to do, like Russia, or they're low impact and hard to do, like Norway, or easy to do, which is generally any Euro market that we might have, but very low impact because of the size of the market and the business. So that area that stops at some point, that inorganic growth, where you can just keep opening new markets. So we have to think about it a bit differently. So what we've had is that the 80-20 started to turn around again, is where we'd moved legacy systems onto a SaaS platform for our web platform and opened lots of websites very quickly, one by one across the markets. We've started to find that we were struggling again, just keeping our head above water and trying to improve what we were doing. So we had to change how we worked as a business. So how we're changing, I'm not going to say how we've changed. This is still a journey for us. Where we've moved is Deckers has also started to go through a change, which really it did accept that there were those silos I talked about earlier, and you no longer could have retail, wholesale, and e-com having its own people, having its own processes, and having its own technologies. So that was convenient for us from a digital point of view, because that gave us the mandate, and that was talked about earlier actually in the Halfords presentation, that mandate of being able to make more of a change. That's what the company was willing to go through. And it's much harder to do if your company isn't willing to do that. Because it still keeps those little empires in the various places. So we're putting them all across. The other thing we did is really looked at our digital architecture and looked at the different website models that we had. we originally just had let's have a local website and let's have a regional website and build lots of local websites, but you get that issue where that matrix showed you. It's unsustainable to manage, it really is. It always amazes me when companies go off and launch 30 language websites in one go, because I think, how are you going to manage that? All the email marketing, content, the promotions, the pricing, amazes me. So we decided to have a sliding scale of where the organic growth was where obviously our mature markets, we would have proper local omni, I hate the word, but we use it a lot, local omni websites, which is very much fully integrated, click and collect, ship from store, all those things that we all try and do, endless aisle, etc. For our UK, Germany and French websites. Local by channel where we didn't have any stores, we'd keep it a bit more simple and it wouldn't be quite so bells and whistles, so that was our Dutch website in Italian. We'd still keep a regional website, which is our core foundation. The other thing we've decided to do is we couldn't go into every single market that UGG is in. Russia is just going to be too difficult. Find the right partner, work with them, work at some kind of hybrid model to make sure they keep on brand, making sure they're giving a good brand experience, and looking at how we can integrate with them and give them asset management support digitally. And then finally, and we're a little bit behind the curve on this, but really, how do we as a business digitally help the wholesale business to give a holistic digital experience? So that's where we started to go. It's a sliding scale. It meant that we weren't down that route of you've got to open a website for Scandinavia or for Denmark or Norway, etc. We think a bit differently and think about each market. It goes down this route of how, again, the more organic, the more we controlled as Deckers the websites, the more personalized it is. And as it goes along the scale to that side, it's just localized. I know it's a horrible phrase, but it is right. You're global in scope, but you're localizing as much as you can, but you can't do everything. And everything we do, digital experience-wise, on those first three, from our point of view, where we control it, mobile first, technology personalization is important, conversion optimization, by usability and best practice. We spend a lot of time on conversion rate optimization, and it's clearly a growing area that everyone's getting into, and trying to keep that engaging brand storytelling in those channels where we control it as much as we can. And then obviously, just within those local, more controlled markets, we do have much more of a, we focus on ECRM and the consumer journey much more, and consumer insights, and it's much more integrated with our brand marketing teams, because that's the area we control. So what we decided is we can't do everything for everybody. We knew one size didn't fit all, and we were adapting it a bit, but we realized we had to just focus on change the way we worked. And so what we've done is we've moved to more of a digital hub and spoke. We've pulled everything in. Luckily, our platform that we use right now is more scalable in the ability to manage pricing, which is one of our key things. And we've centralized how we manage our categories. So we do much more in a central kind of white label area, where we're going to be launching that very soon. And then we just push out to these websites when we need to, eventually. And the only things we do locally right now are pricing, promotions. Social is quite important and a good way of getting content for those, but it's very local in what we do. We have local trade and marketing teams in a number of those, in a number of our markets, and we work with them closely. And again, if there are local marketing initiatives that happen there, we do that with them. Everything else, again, is centralized. It's not quite cookie cutter, but you have to be realistic about what you can manage and achieve. The other thing we decided to do was move to Agile within our digital teams, and this was a global initiative. I presume a lot of people know about Agile, hopefully. There's a lot about digital transformation, being more agile in what you're doing, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about. And it has four things: individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. You can read it. I'm sorry, I read it out. But the things that you value more are about being quick, moving fast, and in the way of working. So it was going away from the traditional IT model, which is lots of documentation, heinously long project management meetings that go on for 3 days, where you listen to everyone else and you sit there on your phone and do other bits and pieces. So one of the key elements of that we've introduced in the business, and this is really around an agile structure, is product owners. And the definition of a product owner is someone who has authority, so they know the subject they're talking about. Availability, so they need to have the time to be able to manage it, because we weren't creating loads of new positions here. We were rethinking about how our existing team was working, and the knowledge to do the work. And we've introduced it in this way. So we've thought about it internationally. The way we've done it is obviously all these people work across all these languages, so we don't separate things out by language, but we break it out across our brands. Marketing technology is a product. Any technology we have out there, they have to look at it holistically across all 3 brands in all markets. The area where we do separate out the brands is trading and content, and obviously, sorry, I used the conversion funnel on the right. These guys are only focused as product owners on the areas that they're focused on. So trading and content is only focused on trading landing page to shopping cart. They have no interest and have no authority in our shopping basket or anything else that happens. They have no authority in the marketing elements that happen, though they work with the marketing teams to make sure we have correct consumer journeys and landing pages. And we've broken that out with each of our brands. UGG has one, and the other 2 brands, because they are smaller, have one as 2. We also have a product owner from basket to checkout. It's such an important piece of what you do as a business internationally, and it's so different by market that if you're making a change on a French checkout because you haven't got carte blanche showing properly, or in Germany, your terms and conditions need to be tested because Germans like reading terms and conditions before they purchase. You want to do it across 3 websites and someone owning it, not someone working for UGG going and doing it and going, oh, shall we do it on the other websites? Okay. So we broke that out there. We also have a group who work on omni-fulfillment customer service and how that affects the site and consumer journeys. And we also have a product owner for what we call digital into physical, which is really the omni-channel capabilities, click and collect, click and reserve, endless aisle, ship from store, data capture in store, consumer experience there. And their experience is really, they kind of link with the retail operations and try and give a really good experience there. Supporting all these, we have a team, we have a UX specialist, web development, which we have in-house and some outsource, and we have a QA. They are agnostic to any of this. They support these teams, and I'll go into that in a second. I'm probably running low on time, but I'll go as quick as I can. Example of one of our products, and going back to those characteristics we talked about, is the basket to checkout. And their aim, each of these guys has an aim, which is to ensure a consistent, localized checkout experience, dependent on the website model. So go back to those website models, you know, the website experience for an integrated omni-channel website which has click and collect and click and reserve is going to have a different basket to a mono-channel Italian website. It's very different, so they have to. That's what they focus on. It's owned by our D2C customer operations manager, so it doesn't sit within the web team. This person does not sit in the web team. They sit in operations now. This is important. They look at different inputs of how they get ways to improve and agilely and iteratively change what we do on the website. So obviously, they have customer service who will tell them if there are issues on the checkouts that we should be changing, dress formats are wrong, etc. They talk to agencies, remote in-house user testing. Payment service providers, again, at Basket, they're a good source of people you should speak to around payment types, how other customers are doing it. Multivariate testing, you can read all these. They're all inputs that they can use. And the prioritization of the works is not done in a big steering committee. The world of big steering committees and having thousands of people doing it doesn't exist. Product owners, stakeholders, which is normally, in this case, would be me, operations, and finance probably, and our head of e-commerce. So, and they have one KPI at the moment, which is basket to checkout conversions. They just have to keep improving that conversion rate optimization. We've then supporting that, we've gone from a waterfall, Scrum, which is another methodology, merged them together. You can't really just do Agile in a brand or a bigger retail business, in my view. And so what obviously the ideas come, so they discover what things they want to get done. They're normally small iterative things, they value them, and then what happens is our team go in, the UX specialist and product owner look at the design, wireframe, usability testing, user experience stuff. It's then sent with the UX specialist then works with the product owner and the web developers and programmers to give a development. I won't go into Scrum, but what it is sprints. You go and look at it. I think it's called minimal viable products or something. And you look at it every 2 weeks and you improve it and look and improve what's there, rather than doing a big project in a big bang. And then we deploy it. It goes through release QA, UAT. Finance and IT, if applicable. Another thing that we're trying to do is slightly decouple ourselves from core IT, who have enough to worry about, and do as much work in the front end as we can. So they're really only involved if there's any IT changes that need to happen in our core systems, or finance need to do testing. Some results. We're back to 30% year-on-year growth, which for a while we were struggling a little bit as we hit that kind of block. And there were other things within the business, but we've seen an upward curve. Initially, actually, in our UK and Germany markets, by focusing on those products and looking at them, we saw some amazing conversion improvements on our German checkout that we just didn't realize were going to happen. Our macro conversion rate increases, and what I mean by macro conversion is the conversion rates you can control. So each of those product owners has conversion rates. So if you're in trading, you're looking at landing page to basket. So looking at all those little conversions, making little changes on product pages rather than a big website redesign. So across the board, it went up 25% last year, which for us in a relatively flat year of visit traffic was imperative in our growth. We're more integrated with the rest of the business. By nature, being agile and having these product groups means you have to pull in other areas of the business that traditionally you're siloed in. So especially, for example, in the digital into product group that we have, working in the stores, going across, working with the French retail teams, UK retail teams, we're seeing an amazing improvement in some of the services we're offering. You're working outside your silo. You're not the e-commerce team. It was mentioned earlier, and I have exactly the same thing where we used to build an endless aisle application on our iPad, and then the manager would just shove it in his drawer in the store. That person is there to work across those silos, and we're seeing some gains there. Again, increasing productivity. I can't explain why it works being agile, but it does. We're getting much more done. We have much less technical debt, which is the age-old, oh, we'll do that in phase 2, we'll do that in phase 2, or that's a fix we'll do after launch for any project. We're doing, because of the way we're working, when we're going live with products, they seem to have less fixes that need to get done afterwards. And last year, our help desk tickets, which were there a year before, we had 200 waiting at code freeze. We all love code freeze. We had 0 last year as a result of that. So it's been great for us. And the scalable structure for growth, the other element we've had is I feel very comfortable now. If I go back to the slide where I showed the matrix of the growth in other markets, I feel very comfortable now. I could go and do Spain. I could go and do Denmark, because I feel the structures there are now in place for us to be able to manage it, which before, with our siloed websites and the way we were doing things and repetitive tasks and everything that we were doing from a category and content point of view and merchandising, is now that now goes away. So key takeaways. As you grow your international business, it does bring new challenges when you get to that scale point. There is an inflection point you reach, and you have to make some decisions, because I think it's very hard to make those decisions right at the beginning of your international journey. It just doesn't happen. Learn from your mistakes, and those of others. There is so much detail out there now of people like me who are being very honest about things that worked and didn't work. So there's more information out there. There's so much there you can do to do this. Technology is getting better, and you need to keep on top of it. You really have to work out which technology vendors with your APIs, etc., you can use. And they're so easy to integrate now, but you have to find the right ones. Glocalize, again, it's a slightly nasty term, but it really is. Try and localize as much as you can. There are vendors out there who you can do drop shipments to, and they'll show pricing in local currencies, or and deal with customs and duties for you. So localize where you can. Take advantage of some of those vendors out there that can help you, but also where it's in your control, just to have a sliding scale on what you think you can really achieve. Because I do know a lot of companies who opened like 30 websites and then went back down to 10. So just think about that. Structure your team around products and functions, which I think I've delved into a lot. And obviously, digital agility, I'm sure if you're reading right now across the board, there are so many things out there about digital transformation. It's essential for maturing internationally, but just for your business. And one thing we're really trying to do is evangelize more outside of our silos, across into operations, into the traditional IT teams, that they need to be thinking a little bit more differently if we want to survive. You know, that old world of a cumbersome, inflexible beast moving along, and no, we need to have everything centrally controlled from an IT point of view, or no, I need to hold on to my P&L for wholesale in whichever market. That has to start changing, and that's the journey that we're going on as well. So there we go. Thank you.